Most individuals know that poverty is an issue. However, not many understand the critical nature of it. Poverty, specifically in children, has devastating effects and impacts on health, education, safety, and development. The statement describing poverty that I chose to use as my foundation was released by the General Assembly in its annual resolution on the rights of the child. According to the General Assembly, children living in poverty are deprived of nutrition, water and sanitation facilities, access to basic health care services, shelter, education, participation, and protection. The General Assembly went on to say that while a severe lack of goods and services hurts every human being, it is most threatening and harmful to children, leaving them unable to enjoy their rights, to reach their full potential, and to participate as full members of society. The prevalence of poverty in American children is especially alarming. A census in 2010 revealed that 1 in every 5 children in the U.S. have lived in families who fell below the poverty line. That adds up to around 12 to 14 million children. Poverty has an extreme effect on children's academic outcomes, and the disadvantage begins in the early years of life. Research found that children who come from professional families are exposed to around 45 million words by the age of 4. Compare that to children who come from working class families being exposed to around 22 million words by the age of 4. Unfortunately, the disparity grows. Children who come from families living in poverty are exposed to a mere 13 million words by the age of 4. The average impoverished child has missed out on nearly 32 million words. On top of that, research found that 2/3 of families living in poverty do not own even one book that is developmentally appropriate for a child under 5. The impacts of poverty are immediate. Mothers living in poverty are 2 times as likely to have premature births or have low birth weight babies. Premature births and low birth weights can lead to long-term intellectual or developmental disabilities or delays. Before a child is even born, they are already at a disadvantage. Short-term effects of childhood poverty include things such as inadequate nutrition, fewer learning experiences, exposure to environmental toxins, family violence, lack of access to health care, and higher incidences of adverse health and developmental outcomes. Poverty is also linked to substandard housing, homelessness, unsafe neighborhoods, inadequate childcare, and under-resourced schools. It is a fact that children living in poverty are more likely to enter lower quality schools. According to the American Psychological Association, schools in poor communities struggle to meet the learning needs of their students and aid them in fulfilling their potential. The inadequate education contributes to the cycle of poverty by making it more difficult for the children to lift themselves and future generations out of poverty. Long-term impacts have been discovered through longitudinal research and studies. Did you know children who have lived in poverty are more likely to have poor academic achievement, 2 times as likely to repeat a grade, and 10 times as likely to drop out of school? These children are also more likely to be abused or neglected, have behavioral or social-emotional problems, or developmental delays when compared to their non-poor counterpart. When looking at racial and ethnic information, it becomes obvious that poverty is concentrated. The poverty rate for children who are Black is 38%, Hispanic 32%, non-Hispanic white 17%, and Asian 13%. From 2009 to 2010, the number of children living in poverty raised by almost 1 million. Poverty is a cycle, and it begins the second a child is conceived. It looks like this. A family is in poverty. The child grows up in poverty. The child is disadvantaged in education and skills. They then struggle to get a job. They fail to escape the poverty cycle, and then they have their own family, and the cycle begins again. Poverty is not specific to the U.S. If the world continues to follow the path it is on, then the future is bleak. In 2030, if nothing changes, 167 million children will live in extreme poverty. 69 million children under the age of 5 will die between 2016 and 2030, and 60 million children will be out of school. Poverty doesn't just affect those who are poor, it affects the entirety of society. Economists say that childhood poverty costs the U.S. about $500 billion per year. This number is estimated based off reduction of productivity and economic output, the increase in crime, and the increase in health-related spending. The reason I chose to delve into this topic is because, as an early childhood educator, children living in poverty are bound to walk through my door and into my classroom. I feel with the prevalence of this issue, it is my responsibility to better understand what poverty is, what it impacts, and how it works. Children are not their caregivers' income or resources. They are not statistics. It is important for all educators to know that a poor child does not equate to a child who is unable to succeed. The data and research out there on childhood poverty is not meant to condemn a child to a certain path. Educators should be aware that poor children are more likely to experience hunger. Hunger can affect reading and math scores, social and emotional behaviors, and physical and mental health. It is important that we are aware of this. As a future teacher, I will use what I have learned as a driving force to combat the impacts and influence the way I teach and interact with students. I will understand, encourage, educate, and advocate. I believe that this is something that all educators can and should strive to do.